Hello, and welcome to Tabletop Magic Commander. Today we're going to dive right into one of my favorite vintage commanders, Akroma, Angel of Fury. Now, Akroma is an 8-drop, 6/6 legendary creature angel that can't be countered, has flying, trample, protection from white, protection from blue, fire breathing, and a morph cost with an activation of 6. Now, a link to this deck list will be posted in this video's description, so let's get into it. Here is a breakdown overview of the deck, categorized by theme. As you can see, we're going relatively heavy in mana ramp as our commander costs 8 to cast. We also have a few required haste enablers, as well as some doublers to potentially one-shot our opponents. As always, with any deck that I build, I try to lean as heavily into card draw as possible. Remember, card advantage wins games. Let's dive right into our land base. First off, we have Buried Ruin, which I had included in the draw category. Buried Ruin is a land that taps for 1 colorless, and it has an activation of 2 colorless to tap and sacrifice it, and return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. So we are relatively artifact heavy in this deck, so this can potentially be very useful to get some of our ramp spells back that we maybe have lost to removal. And so on and so forth. We're also running Command Beacon, which is a land that comes out untapped, and it taps for colorless. You can tap, sacrifice Command Beacon, put your commander into your hand from the command zone. So this can be very useful, especially late game when Akroma is starting to cost more and more. She already starts at 8. You're going to get an extra 2 every time she goes back to the command zone. So I figured this would be a useful include. Flamekin Village. As Flamekin Village enters the battlefield, you may reveal an elemental card from your hand. If you don't, Flamekin Village enters the battlefield tapped. That part is mostly irrelevant. We don't really have very many elementals, but it can tap for a red mana, and more importantly, it has an activation of 1 red mana, and to tap it to give target creature haste until end of turn, which is going to be very useful for Akroma. Great Furnace is an include in the deck. It's an artifact land, comes out untapped, and it taps for a red. This is mainly in the deck just to get Mox Opal online. Mox Opal is a 0-drop legendary artifact with Metalcraft. You can tap it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, but only if you control 3 or more artifacts. Hall of the Bandit Lord is a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped, and you have to tap it, pay 3 life, just to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. Now that may sound really horrible, but if that mana is spent on a creature spell on cast, that creature gains haste. So obviously another haste enabler, very useful in this deck. We also have Kur Keep. It's a legendary land that enters play untapped and can tap for a colorless mana. It has an activation with 1 colorless and 1 red. You can tap it and put a 0/1 red kobold creature token named Kobolds of Kur Keep into play. This card is only in the deck because I run Skull Clamp, which is an artifact that is a very good draw engine. One of my all-time favorite commander cards. Anyone that has played with me knows that. Moving on, we have Maze of Ith. It's a land that does not tap for any mana, but you can tap it to untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to and dealt by that creature this turn. Essentially an extra blocker for missing a land drop, so to speak. Pretty useful, especially in this deck when we're not very creature heavy. We are also running Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle. Valakut enters the battlefield tapped, but whenever a mountain enters the battlefield under your control, if you control at least 5 other mountains, you may have Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, deal 3 damage to any target. It also taps for a red. This is very useful as a form of removal. Yeah, it's great. Finally, in the land base, we have War Room. It's a land that comes into play untapped, and you can tap it for 1 colorless. You can also pay 3 colorless mana, tap it, pay life equal to the number of colors in your commander's color identity, which in this case would be 1 life, and draw a card. So really great. I mean, red needs all the help it can get with drawing cards, so I'm all for it. We are also including 26 mountains in this land base, 36 lands total. Let's go to the next one. So here's a pie chart on the different types of cards used in this deck. You'll notice the artifact category includes artifact creatures, such as any mono-red commander deck. We are heavy in that category. Here's a bar graph displaying this deck's mana curve. As you can see, we are peaking at 2 converted mana cost. This is exactly where we want to be in the current meta. This, of course, is subject to adapt as the format evolves, given that Commander is becoming faster by using more and more lower CMC cards. You want to be able to build your board state as quickly as possible if you want to be competitive. Please note that this will vary depending on your play group. Let's talk about synergy within this deck, as well as explain why I've chosen a few particular cards to include. So first off, we have Braid of Fire. Braid of Fire is 1 colorless and 1 red for enchantment, non-legendary, that says cumulative upkeep, add 1 red mana to your mana pool. This was, of course, printed back in Cold Snap, I believe, when mana burn was still a thing. When you took damage for any mana that was in your mana pool not used in your turn. So this is going to continually age. The first upkeep, you'll get 1. The second upkeep, you'll get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So Braid of Fire, this card is mainly included to dump red mana into Akroma's fire breathing ability during your upkeep. However, if Leyline Tyrant is on board with this enchantment, it can become a pretty powerful synergy. So Leyline Tyrant is 2 colorless and 2 red for a 4/4 flying dragon that says you don't lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. Also, when he dies, you may pay any amount of red. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. So if someone wants to take him out, you just take all that red mana that you still have in your mana pool and just dump it out to him, hit him with a massive fireball. It's a pretty interesting combo there. So moving on, we have Voyager Staff. Voyager Staff is a 1 colorless CMC artifact that has an activation cost of 2 colorless CMC. Sacrifice it and remove target creature from the game. Return that creature to play under its owner's control at end of turn. This artifact is a new personal favorite of mine, as it can double as a form of single target removal, as well as generating additional value for your board state. If you target Akroma as her face down morphed version, she will re-enter the battlefield face up, thus bypassing some of her casting costs. Up next, we have the artifact Liquid Metal Torque. Liquid Metal Torque is a 2 colorless artifact that comes in untapped. You can tap it for 1 colorless, or you can tap it and target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. This artifact is great. Paired with any form of artifact removal, you can destroy any non-land permanent. I've chosen Shenanigans as well as Vandal Blast as an include because you can bring it back from your graveyard over and over again. Not to mention, Liquid Metal Torque also doubles as a mana rock. Painter's Servant is a very interesting card in this deck. Painter's Servant is 2 colorless CMC for an artifact creature Scarecrow. It's a 1/3. When it comes into play, choose a color. All cards that aren't in play, spells and permanents, are the chosen color in addition to their other colors. So if you choose blue, not only will Akroma have protection from everything, you can also count on Red Elemental Blast and Pyroblast, always finding a target. Additionally, Painter's Servant can be tutored out in this deck with Hoarding Dragon or Imperial Recruiter, as well as Gamble. So it's a great one. Plus, let's be honest, Shadowmoor was the coolest set ever, so. All is Dust is an auto-include board wipe in this deck, given that we're so heavy on colorless artifact spells. All is Dust is a 7 colorless CMC tribal sorcery Eldrazi that says each player sacrifices all colored permanents they control. Now, Ignorant Bliss might seem like an ignorant card to include, but this card can potentially have some great value. So Ignorant Bliss is 1 colorless and 1 red for an instant. that says remove all cards in your hand from the game face down. At end of turn, return those cards to your hand, then draw a card. So, at worst, this card is going to cantrip and replace itself. If you're able to have Ignorant Bliss in hand with any of the deck's several wheels, you can skip the discard part of those altogether. Now, I have several wheels included in the deck that I'm displaying here. Wheel of Fortune, Memory Jar, Reforge the Soul, Wheel of Misfortune. We may even have Magus of the Wheel in here. I'm also including Vincer's Journal, mainly for sustain as a mono red deck, but also it has a no max hand size effect, which could come in handy more than you would think. Worldfire also is amazing. Worldfire is 6 CMC colorless with 3 red, so it's actually 7, 8, 9 mana altogether for a sorcery that says exile all permanents, exile all cards from all hands and graveyards. Each player's life total becomes 1. So with its recent unbanning in the Commander format, I'm sure this card is seeing a lot of play lately. If you're able to cast Worldfire, maintain priority, and then cast Ignorant Bliss on the stack, you may have just sealed the game in your favor. So finally, guys, I'd like to share how you would be able to cast Akroma on turn 1. Now, a few of these cards that I'm about to preview did not make the final cut due to their linearity. I try not to include cards into my builds if they only work with particular other cards in the deck. That being said, if you're able to capture this perfect hand, so to speak, this is it's a pretty sweet turn 1 play. So you start off by dropping your mountain for turn, and then you're going to drop out a 0 cost art creature. In this example, we use Ornithopter, a 0 CMC artifact creature, is 0/2 with flying. You're going to tap your mountain for 1 red mana and cast out an Inferno Plunge. Inferno Plunge is a sorcery that costs 1 red that says as an additional cost to cast Inferno Plunge, sacrifice a creature, add 3 red to your mana pool. It's essentially Dark Ritual with extra steps. So at this point, this is what our board state looks like. We have 3 floating red mana and a tapped mountain. We're going to cast Seething Song for 3. It's an instant that adds 5 red to our mana pool. So now we are up to 5 red floating in our mana pool. Turn 1, cast out Jeweled Lotus. Jeweled Lotus is an artifact, I'm sure everyone knows. 0 CMC, tap, sacrifice it. Add 3 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to cast your commander. I'm sure you see where this is going. So you're going to tap it, sacrifice it. You have 8 red mana floating in your mana pool. Spin the 8, cast Akroma, turn 1, can't be countered. And then everyone scoops, right? That's how that's going to go. So guys, thank you so much for watching this deck tech video. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe I didn't reveal all my secrets. Take a look at the deck list. Tell me what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Also, be sure to check out our Twitch channel, where we stream Magic the Gathering each and every Wednesday night. If you're feeling daring, you can even follow us on Twitter at Tabletop Command or join our Discord with the permanent invite link in this video's description. Thanks for watching.